Hey everybody, this is James at Cold School, and thanks for tuning in. So anyway, I just wanted to show y'all an AirBox that I just finished today, and I've got another one I'm building. I should be finished this next week here. I wanted to show you some of the parts here. So this is a cold air box. The whole thing, it's got the heater core on the back, and so it's got the heater core, the radiator, cold air box providing space between the fan and the radiator, safety shield, and also I made a 12 volt speed controller for the fan. And then let's show you the bottom here. And then I also wired it up this way with a barrel plug, so that way, pull this out to the edge, you can actually use, this is 12 volt converter here, or inverter, I guess you could, it's converter because it's coming off of 110. So this is kind of like a laptop charger. It reduces the 110 down to 12 volts. You can get different amps. This one's a 10 amp, so you probably run 5 of these air conditioners. But anyway, you can also buy these barrel plug inline switch and an inline splitter. So the reason I'm doing this for the one that I'm sending overseas is so you can hook up the power supply. So so actually the way it'll go from the power supply to the on-off switch, which is also the barrel plug on both ends, male and female. And then the Y splitter here, which will come into here and then split. And the reason I split them is because one will go here to the 12 volt for the 12 volt pump here. So, and this is all underwater. There's no soldering. It's all underwater approved. And so one of the power sources will go to the pump, and then one of them will go to the AirBox. And so when you and I've got some made some L brackets out of aluminum to put on there. So well, let me show you this first. So this tube here actually crosses over, and this is a drain. The pump here actually goes up and crosses over behind here and comes out over here. So the way I did it, the pump hose will go straight up into this brass fitting here. So you get a better look at that. So it'll go straight up. So it'll fill up from the bottom and raise up and then drain out this side on the back through this tube. Now this is a small ice chest. You don't have to do this on a large ice chest. I had to cross the tubes so when you shut the cooler, the tubes would twist instead of crimp. So I had them at one time going straight up, but when you fold the lid, it would crimp the hose. So this way, it twists instead of crimp, so you don't have any problems. So you can actually take this cold air box with the fan, 12 volt fan controller for the fan, and then just hook up your pump and your drain into the drain and the inlet here. So all you really need is this right here, the radiator, the air box, the fan, and the 12 volt, and you can hook it up to any of your ice chest air conditioners. The purpose of this is because it's a straight flow of air and the fan's not too close, so it can pull all the way across. If the fan was too close, it would only pull in the center. So you have to move your fan out, no matter if you're using an inline or a PC fan, to pull air from the whole from all the way across all your surface space. So basically, on the small one, you can just set it up here. And of course, it attaches, and then you hook up the drain tube here to this, and then underneath, if I can get a good picture of that, underneath, there you go. You'll hook that tube up to this is the pump tube fill, so that'll hook up to there. And then you just plug in, so if you wanted to operate them both, you'd plug the power supply into the on-off switch. Try to do this with one hand. I'm sure a lot of videos are like that. There you go. Plug that in. Now I'm not gonna, well, I guess you could. So we'll plug in, that's an on-off switch for power. And then we'll plug in the splitter. We won't plug in the pump right now because there's no water in the cooler. So either one of these, you can hook up one to the pump and the other one to the fan. So I don't know if it's on or off. It's probably on. Nope. Okay, so there you go. So you just turn the power on or off, and there's your on-off for your fan. So what we'll do, there you go. You can see how fast it's pretty fast. And it's not real loud, it's not wide open, or it is wide open. So that's how fast it'll blow. So what I was gonna say too, if you don't use the on-off switch, because it uses a little bit of electricity, you can actually plug straight in without the on-off switch. Turn this off. And it will actually, without the on-off switch, it'll blow a little bit faster. So I don't know if you'll be able to tell on the, but you can still, the reason I use an inline on-off switch is for the pump and the fan, but only for the, mainly for the pump, because the fan has an on-off switch here. The pump doesn't have one, so I use this on-off. You can just hook it straight in, but if you do, your pump will come straight on as soon as you plug in, unless you have an on-off switch at the wall or something. So this one here goes straight in. I can tell that it's a lot faster already. And that's because that switch. See that? That's because the inline switch actually uses some of the 12 volt electricity. So if you bypass that and you just plug you could probably plug the Y in first. So I'll show you how I won't turn it on because the pump's not got water in it. But you plug it in like that, and then when you plug it in, but you'd have to make sure you got water in the pump first, your float level. So that's what this one's for. It's mainly for the pump. You could actually, if you wanted to, put the on-off switch coming out of the Y like this. Try to get that on there. We're trying, there we go. Oh, almost. Oh, one hand trying. I'm gonna set the phone down here. Make sure we got this right plug. There we go. Sorry about that. And then you could use the on-off switch here to go to the pump, but I prefer to have the Y splitter on the back side. So anyway, oops, sorry about that. So that's how it works. So you can build you an AirBox like this, or I can build you one, either way. And you can hook this onto, so I use the inverted ice chest lid. I turn it upside down and backwards and then cut the bottom out and make it the top so it'll catch condensation here. This is really rough. I built this one small to take measurements on, so there's a lot of holes I've drilled and re-drilled and made to while I was taking measurements. So this is just the beta version. The big one works fine, the little one works fine. I'm just making this as a template so I can make the other one after I've made all the errors and the mistakes and the measurements. So anyway, with a large one, you can just run your pump straight down using latex soft tubing like this, or the harder tubing, it won't matter. And what you can do on a larger ice chest is leave the lid the way it goes, right side up. This one's upside down, right side up. And then you can cut a hole out in the top, but not the bottom, which will be that drip pan. And then you could set the air box inside of the cutout area and then drill. So you'll only cut the top out like a square foot or so for the cold air box, and then drill a couple of holes for the condensation to drip through. And you won't have to cross over your hoses so you can fit it in such a small ice chest. It took a lot of design to do this. I also took some PVC trim. It's like lumber made out of PVC. And I used a heat gun and I bent the PVC and I made a cradle. So the cradle actually, the reason I did the cradle was so I don't have to drill these screws into the cooler wall. Because coolers are made out of polypropylene, and there's no adhesive or glue that's made for polypropylene. I used to work in a refinery in Texas, and I used to be a they call it HDPE pipe technician welder. And so you have to melt it, two pieces, and then stick them together, and that's how you fuse it together. They don't make a glue for polypropylene. So I built this cradle, and then I put the screw holes to mount it up top above the water level and above the ice level, so that way the water won't seep into the holes. It would have probably only went into the insulation, but I didn't want any holes. So these short screws here that hold the hole straps for the tubing on the pump, they don't go all the way through the PVC lumber. And I also made the cradle, I left a little space on the bottom so water won't get caught behind or underneath and mildew or anything like that. And so that's pretty cool. And this pump here has the little switch. You can slow down the water flow, so you can make a little tiny ice chest air conditioner like this last for hours by slowing down the water pump flow to where when it fills up slowly, because the water's not going to change temperature by the time it just travels through this short distance with the ambient temperature heat on the radiator. So you can actually slow down the water to where it just trickles back in to the cooler, and then it'll trickle into this tube